Welcome to Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, a podcast for all you wine lovers who, if you're like me, just cannot get enough of the good stuff. I'm Janina, your host, brand ambassador, wine educator, and sommelier. So stick with me as we dive deeper into this ever-evolving, wonderful world of wine. And wherever you are listening to this, cheers to you.
Hello, wine friends, and welcome back to today's episode, where we are finally going to get to know better a country that so many of us have travelled to due to its crystalline water, its white stone villages, simply the beauty, the food, the history. But what about the wines? I am talking about Croatia. Can you name one Croatian grape variety? Well, my guest, Miquel Hudin, can name them all. He is an American-Croatian writer, originally from California, now based in Catalonia in Spain. In 2008, he founded the Vinologue series, beautifully focused books on individual wine regions, and the very first one was on Dalmatia, the historic coastal region in southern Croatia. Along the way, he's picked up more than a few serious accolades: Best Drink Writer at the Fortnum and Mason Awards, the Geoffrey Roberts Award, and the Wine and Innovation Award from Millesima. So I'm excited to be able to have Miguel's deep Croatian experience as our compass. So get ready to learn about the regions, the indigenous grapes, the history, where to go, wineries to visit, names to know about. And here is your fun fact of the episode. Zinfandel is Croatian. The grape that made California famous, big, bold Zinfandel, is genetically identical to an old Croatian variety called, I'm so sorry, I am going to butcher this, but I would say Crljenak Kaštelanski. That is my very best practice version. Forgive me, Croatians. But before we go to the chat, a quick shout out to this episode's lovely sponsor, Via Vinum. We are officially over the January blues, so how about we start planning something truly delicious for 2026? If you've ever dreamed of sipping wine in Spain or France, Italy or Portugal for that matter, you do not need to lift a finger to plan it. Via Vinum are your people. They create totally bespoke itineraries for couples and for big groups, blending wine, food, culture, and stunning landscapes into one seamless trip. What's great is that they have insider knowledge, are proud to bring a premium service, and they have clients who keep coming back. So perhaps it is time to start thinking about your next wine adventure. Check out the link in my show notes for all the details, and with my code EATSLEEPWINE, you'll get 5% off or 8% if you're booking as a group of more than 6 people. So thank you, Via Vinum Wine Tours, for the discount and your support. Right, let's go to the episode. Miquel, you are in the wine chair. So let me start with asking you, for anyone that is new to Croatian wine, which I think is almost all of us, can you give us the elevator pitch? I mean, what makes Croatian wine worth exploring in, of course, this busy world of wine regions?
I think it's fantastic, and then it offers up sort of another dimension of the Mediterranean for people who know Spain or Italy or southern France. It's going to offer something a bit more similar to what you find in Greece. Also, it has the advantage of basically being like two regions in one. You have the continental side and you have the coastal side. I think a lot of people maybe encounter it when they're on holiday in Croatia for the first time. And that's, going to be a good entrance point for people. In terms of finding the wines outside of Croatia, that can be a little hit and miss, but I think there's definitely a lot of interesting wines, different grape varieties, which can be a plus and a minus because some of them are maybe a little hard to pronounce, as well as the names of the wineries. And they also have some antiquated terminology they're still used, and it dates back to the Yugoslavian times. But the core, on the coast, you're dealing with some really nicely made Mediterranean grapes that are high quality grapes and give people a lot of what they're looking for these days, especially if they're into wines that see a bit of sun from Southern Europe.
And you said about, we've obviously got the regions along the coast that are Mediterranean, then you've got your regions inland which are more continental. Is there one region that is kind of stepping up to represent Croatia a little bit more, most of the volume at all?
I would say that probably that's going to be Istria.
Okay.
A lot of people are going to probably encounter the Dalmatian wines, the more southern wines first, because of those being larger tourist destinations and a lot of the islands that people go to producing a good amount of wine. But in terms of a larger production and sort of wines that are going to orient themselves more towards being a quote unquote Italian style, those are definitely the wines from Istria. And also they have some nice price points too.
Well, I mean, I just want to get to Dubrovnik. I've been wanting to get there since Game of Thrones did all their filming. I think the City Landing was filmed there, right?
Yeah.
I imagine since then it's been a lot busier with tourism, but I don't know whether that's helped Croatian wines. No comment on that. I mean, who knows?
I would say that the thing is that the tourism is a great plus and it's also a great minus. It's a plus in that there's a ready market for all the producers along the coast and they can just sell directly. It's a minus and that they can just basically sell everything that they produce directly, no matter the quality and to a large degree the price. I find the prices to be a little bit high, especially down in Dalmatia in the south. Again, in Istria, I think it's a bit more balanced in terms of price levels, but Dalmatia can be a touch pricey. Admittedly, it can be a bit hard to work there because these are pretty rough, dry lands, and you get a lot of fruit loss due to the nature of one of the main red varieties, which is Plavac Mali. And so there's going to be a baked-in cost for producing these wines. But the tourism definitely has given them a lot of movement. It's given them a lot more exposure. Admittedly, like the last time I was in Dubrovnik was in fall of 22, and it's pretty touristic now. I mean, you go to the tourism office and there's like a big giant sign for Game of Thrones tours. So that's a little much. I don't know what it must be like in July and August. I'm sure it's much more intense. I think maybe that's fading off a little bit, but it's still, it's been a big proper destination for quite a while. The interesting thing about Dubrovnik is that you can base yourself there, but there's actually really nice trips to take outside of it. You can go to the Elefiti Islands, which are a nice skip up there, and you can also go out to Konavle, which was the valley that was producing most of the fruits, vegetables, and wine for Dubrovnik back in the past. That's much more tranquil, calm, and still a very nice place to go. And the islands, the Elefitis are a lot of fun to go up to as well. And also the Pelješac Peninsula, which is a bit further.
Interesting. I mean, so if actually somebody had 3 days in Croatia and they want a crash course, though, specifically this kind of wine adventure, where are you going to send them? These places that you've just mentioned, or would you say just go up north to Istria and really discover that region?
Istria is going to be your most accessible point of entry, definitely.
Okay.
The wines are great. They're blended with the food really well. The food is tremendous. The coast can be a bit heavy in the peak months, like anywhere in the Mediterranean. But even then, if you just go 10, 15 kilometers inland, it gets much more tranquil, and the little hilltop valley villages that are up on the top are very pleasant, nice places to eat. It's great. I was just there in July, actually, and was in the very, very touristic village of Moldavun, which was still very nice. Had steak with truffle on top, and it was pretty outstanding. That said, you can also go to Hvar. Hvar is right off the coast, but it's one of the biggest islands, and they're kind of an all-in-one package. You sort of in the left side and the west side of it. The wines are very good. A couple of the star producers there are Saric and Tomac, and they're making some great wines. The food is very good. The only problem with Hvar is that basically from kind of the end of October until the very beginning of April, most things are shut down because they still work on this antiquated sort of tourist model. But they are working to change that. They're working to get more ferries out there as well, because the only way you can go there is by ferry from Split.
Right.
But Hvar is a great kind of all-in-one sort of destination to go to if you're in the mood for an island.
And very important, can you spell that?
Hvar.
The island. Yes.
Hvar.
Oh, that's exactly. Yep, there we go.
Yeah, exactly what you were thinking. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I was just testing you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, as everybody in Spain says, Ache bar. So, you know.
Okay, well, there we go. I mean, any interpretation, but now everyone listening, they know to actually Google correctly for them to plan this trip. So you have tasted wines all over the world. You don't actually focus on Croatian wine. That's one of your loves. I know a lot of Spanish wine is one of your big focuses. But before Croatia ever caught your attention, was there a particular region or was there a wine that really sparked your passion for the world of wine?
The 1995 Diamond Series Zinfandel from Francis Ford Coppola.
That's so specific. Yes.
Yeah, because I always have this right here because this question comes up a lot. You know, it's like what was your introductory wine? The reason I mentioned this one, because a lot of people say like, I don't know, some, 1960 something Mouton or something else that's really super classic, especially from the UK. I mean, you guys have had access to the classic wines forever. US, a little bit of a newer thing. The reason I mention that is because from 1999 to 2002, I was working for the winery that Francis Ford Coppola owns. And when you work for it, you get a 50% discount. So immediately wine became very, very accessible for me. Before that, I wasn't drinking it at all. And there was this palette of this basically kind of bulk blend Zinfandel that they produced that was returned to the winery, and they were selling it off retail for $10 a bottle, which in the US is incredible. I got it for $5. I bought about 6 or 7 boxes of it, and that's what really got me hooked on wine, was kind of drinking that all the time. After that, probably what was most interesting was going to Croatia for the first time in 2004 and being in Dubrovnik and actually tasting Plavac Mali there in person in the old town and really enjoying that experience and wanting to learn more about it. But my family is actually from Croatia, although from the interior.
So there's that little tie, okay. I'm tying the dots, I'm connecting them all now. You've now mentioned twice Plavac Mali, this grape variety.
Yep.
I feel like maybe then we should start on this. Is this the most planted red indigenous variety?
I want to say yes. On the coast, in Dalmatia, most definitely. It's the most dominant variety, and it's probably the most, from Istria and Dalmatia, it's the most dominant because up in Istria, it's only 20% is red. I don't know if there's an indigenous variety that's planted more in terms of red. In terms of white, the biggest is Herzegovina, which is also known as Welsh Riesling. That, I think, is the most planted native variety in the whole country, and it's white. But on the coast, it's definitely the red of Plavac Mali, and for good reason. It's adapted quite well. I mean, it's a child of Zinfandel, but Zinfandel had a lot of problems there, so it didn't really take well to the region in terms of the fact that in extreme heat like they have, it can really raisin up, and it ripens very unevenly. So Plavac Mali is a bit better in that regard, and I think that's the reason why it sort of took off.
See, that's funny as well. Here I am like making some ties, but of course for anybody who doesn't know, Zinfandel originated from Croatia. I haven't even thought of that right now as planning for this episode. And ironically, Zinfandel was your first experience with wine, and then you kind of jumped across to Croatia. It's quite clearly it's in your blood somehow.
Yeah, and also my another fun tidbit is my great-grandfather, who was the last one born in Croatia, his favorite wine to drink in California when he was still alive was Zinfandel, not knowing that it was originally from Croatia. So,
That is fascinating. So this is quite a full-bodied red, isn't it? It's quite rich and darker fruits, a little spicy. And that's all I know. That's it. I'm out of the game. Do you have anything extra to add to it?
It would be for people who like larger body Southern European grapes, but it has a lot more volume than something like Garnacha. It's more like Crljenak or Bilbao for people who know those. It's not going to be like Sangiovese. It's definitely not going to be like Nebbiolo, but it's broader on the palate. It has a lot more tannins to it. It has a reasonable amount of acidity. It can also have sort of a mix of sort of berry tones and some slight kind of herbal sort of green tones to it. It can be very alcoholic if people aren't careful with it. I've had ones that are 17% alcohol, like a normal wine, not a dessert wine, like a normal wine. And there's not a lot normal about drinking that. It's pretty potent, but the I would say that generally it's going to appeal to most wine drinkers, whether it's in the younger format or an aged format. Thankfully, they've pulled back on the really aggressive oak aging to it. There's like even a thing like on the label they'll put barrique in French, and that sort of like indicates a higher class of wine.
Okay.
Obviously, that's not really going to speak to people these days, but they're doing less oak aging and smaller barrels, and that's changing quite a bit because it just like most of the Southern Europe, it just doesn't need all this oak. It's got tons of volume to it on its own.
So I'm lucky enough that I personally have some wines to taste that you're going to take me through. So we'll come back to the grape varieties. What I want to talk about a little bit is about the fact that you are a writer of wine, but your first book with is it the Vinologue series was actually on Dalmatian wines.
Yeah.
Then you did a few other countries. You obviously decided to step out, but then came back and wrote another book on Istria. So just as a question, why didn't you do them in order? Why didn't you do two Croatian books next to each other? Yeah, talk to me about you choosing to do these books.
Yeah, so the original intent of it, I went over in 2007. I went over and did a big tour of Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, and I had this big idea of just writing a book called Vino, but not for Italy, but for the Slavic wines the Slavic countries that are producing wine. That quickly became unreasonable because it was just too big. And then I slimmed it down to doing Dalmatian. Then I realized when I went into Herzegovina, which is the southern part of Bosnia, that there's a lot of shared DNA. I mean, a lot of the people there are ethnically or have their original roots being Croatian. So there's really a lot of back and forth between the regions. So that's why that was actually one book of Dalmatia Herzegovina. Then there was the idea to do Istria. I was working with a guy who's actually based there, does tours, and it just kind of went on, and that actually didn't happen. So that book was ultimately not published.
Was it not?
No. So
how do I know? So hang on, how do I know that you have one? Is there like a picture of it?
I think there's a cover out there for when we were working on it. That might still be floating around, but
That's so funny. Oh no.
Yeah, that one unfortunately didn't happen. And at that point, I had moved from California to be based in Catalonia. So that's why then I did Empordà, which is the northeast part of Catalonia, and then Priorat, Montsant. I did a book on Georgia because I won this bursary prize from the UK. That actually made that possible. Because all these are done independently. These aren't done through some other publisher. They're not done with sponsorship. There's no, pay for play or anything like that. Everything is very independent, which is a pretty rough way to go about printing books. And that's why there hasn't been a new one for a little while. But that's basically the story behind the books.
Well, listen, everybody listening, I'm going to put a link to these books. I'm pretty sure there is a front cover for Istria. So if you guys listening, if we all work together and everyone downloads and buys some of these books, then Miquel is going to have to then finally finish and write a book on Istria, right? Isn't that right? Yes?
I hope so, yes.
The demand is about to start today. Get ready. Okay, so I'm going to let you off the hook that one's not written yet. I'm feeling thirsty. So I'm going to go to my first wine, which, am I pronouncing the grape variety correctly, which is Pošip? Pošip?
Pošip, yeah.
Okay, so if I had a bit more of an accent, but yeah, Pošip. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So I've got a Pošip, which is a white grape variety from the Jacko wine. It's from Jacobino.
Yep.
But the Stina project. So it
Correct.
Sounds quite exciting. How can you tell me more about this? Because he's kind of taken over. Was it the Dalmatian Wine Cooperative, and then just like completely changed, renovated everything?
Yeah.
Am I right in this story?
Yeah. So when I was traveling around 2007, I was actually on the island of Brač, which is where this is from. It's where the winery is based. Brač is a big island with very little in the middle of it, and coast is quite popular. There's a beach on the southern side called Zlatni Rat, which means like the Golden Beach. It's a little triangle. Everybody goes to it because it's like one of the only few sandy beaches in all of Croatia. Most of them are pebble beaches. I think you call them shingle beaches in the UK. And when I visited the winery, it was still the cooperative, which was a pretty rough affair. I mean, they were producing wine, but it was just basically being sold in bulk and jugs to the tourists who came by there. At some point, the family behind this came along and they bought out the cooperative. They had their money from having hotels in the island. They refurbished the winery. They planted new vineyards, which is actually a very important aspect to this, and using a lot of some very nice locations within the island of Brač. So they produce their wines. I don't know the exact percentage, but there's a significant amount of vineyards on Brač, but they also have some fruit that they buy in. That one that you're drinking, I think, is about 2/3 of it. The Pošip is from Brač, and then there's 1/3 from the island of Korčula, which is actually its original home. Korčula is pretty close to Dubrovnik. And that there is a pretty big difference between Pošip you find on Korčula, the Pošip you find on the mainland, and the Pošip you find on Brač. What you're finding on Brač is going to be a little bit more kind of angular and direct, I think, because the soils are much more limestone and higher acidity. Korčula in the middle kind of has this sort of softer soil to it, and it kind of allows the grape to flourish a bit more and be a little bit more aromatic, I think. It's a pretty smart thing to be kind of combining between the two, because I think they both bring a bit into the equation. If you're tasting it directly from Korčula, from the home of it, it's going to be quite aromatic. It's going to have some kind of apple blossoms and jasmine to it, and a really nice kind of honeyed quality as well. It's one of my favorite varieties. For anybody who loves Asiatico from Santorini, or you have heard of or tasted Xarel·lo from Catalonia or Godello from Galicia, it fits right in line with all of these. It's got good body on the palate, and it's just a wealth of wine to really enjoy in terms of, people looking for a nice, full-bodied, really savory white wine.
This is delicious. If anybody, this is the 2024 vintage. I guess you've said that he's probably combined the Pošip from those two locations. There is this actual beautiful aromatics of like honeydew melon and passion fruit. So actually, it's got this absolutely beautiful nose mixing between floral and fruity. But the palate, beautifully textured and almost a little bit of graphite and like a chalky, slightly fleshy texture with, again, a little honey note, and the acidity is high and almost like a little spiciness cutting through, but it's that spicy kind of mineral edge. It's really grown up, very elegant, mouth-filling. Really, I'm surprised. This is my first experience with Pošip, and so, this is absolutely beautiful. And I think one of the few things that I know about the Stina project is that he called the wine Stina, the Stina project, because Stina is the name for the white stones, and you've mentioned limestone. Yep. So I think he's really trying to go for this pure style. He's trying to showcase the terroir of the island, and really demonstrate, I think, the sea and the sun and the wind.
The island of Brač is more not as well known for wine, and much more well known for being a quarry. So they were quarrying stone out of there, and I can't remember the history of it, but the stone from Brač has been in all kinds of places around the world. It was exported. It's quite well known for actually the stone. And Stina means it's a local dialect for stone, because the actual word in Croatian I think is common, if I recall. But it's a great project, and the labels are very kind of austere and sort of abstract, which has gotten a lot of ire from people in service, because they don't know what they're pulling out. But it's also gotten them a lot of awards, because if you go to Croatia and you look at the wine selection in most shops, there's going to be a lot of gold. Like, it's very Trump style, like just gold everywhere, and it's a bit over the top. And so this was sort of a huge reaction to these ridiculous old school labels that were on there, and it goes the complete opposite direction, and I think it largely works. They're also one of my favorite producers for Plavac Mali. One of their top wines is Stipančić, which is from a very unique vineyard that's in kind of like a gully, and so it sees a lot less sun, but that kind of has preserved the fruit and really creates an extremely nuanced, really, really beautiful Plavac Mali. So, I'm so glad that I was able to get my hands on this specific wine. Anyone who's interested in tasting the wine, you can get it from Strictly Wine for £29. Not cheap, but you did mention Croatian wine is not going to be the cheapest thing, but quality, 100%. This as a £30 bottle of wine. It pulls its weight. I have to say, and everyone, I'm going to make sure that this label is on Instagram at some point, because it literally, just to explain further, it is a plain label. There is absolutely nothing on it, but beautifully textural. And then actually the words, if you look close enough, are like imprinted
into it. So yes, in service as a waiter or a sommelier, I would not be happy pulling this out and trying to if I had two from them. But it tastes good, everyone. So as long as you're not a sommelier, like guys, just go and buy a bottle if you can. Okay, so from a very small winery that's quite new, that's making a lot of change, I was really, really happy to get my hands on some hang on. I'm going to say Kozlovic.
Kozlovic.
Kozlovic. Okay, perfect. That wasn't so bad. So this winery dates back to 1904. So I have the Malvasia Istriana, but the number one wine from one specific vineyard called Santa Lucia. So I'm going to pour this. I mean, am I right in thinking that this winery really is like the pioneers? Since the 1990s specifically, they've started putting Croatian wine on the map again, the new era of winemaking from this country?
Yeah, so I think that's a key thing to really kind of mention at this point, is the fact that it was, this was a communist, Croatia was part of Yugoslavia, this was communist. You weren't able to legally produce your own wine until independence. There was a slight liberalization in there, and you could start, and some people had started kind of back in the 80s. This is all very gray. Nobody ever really kind of talks concrete about this period, but most of all the wineries are going to be actually dating their initial production back to the early 90s with the Croatian independence from Yugoslavia. So everything is quite new. But there's a long family history of Kozlovic as well as Matošević, and there's a number of really great producers in the region, but those are two that I've been following for quite a while. Kozlovic is in this nice little valley way up in the northern part of Istria. It's a very cool spot in terms of Southern Europe. And there's there's ruins of an old castle right above it. It's very atmospheric to go and visit there. Giancarlo is a very charismatic fellow. And it's a perfect example of the fact that there's really this fusion of like Croatian and Slavic and Latin sort of cross sections here, because I mean the wine is Santa Lucia, like in Italian. The owner's name is Giancarlo, but last name is Kozlovic. So, and all the signs in the region are in Croatian and Italian. So it's there's a lot of overlap in the region, and that's why you see this origin of a lot of the grapes in the region being actually originally Italian. So while they're native to the region, they're also found in Italy under different names. But it's a great project. He's been producing one of high quality wines. I think the first time I visited this was again back in 2007, and he was talking with people. I just sort of showed up because I didn't really know how to. I mean, it was 2007. There was trying to make a reservation was not happening. There was no WhatsApp. Emails were not really answered back then. So I got busted by some undercover police agents in a village nearby because I was using the Wi-Fi outside the tourist office. But my rental car was from Slovenia, and so it had Slovenian plates. And at this time, still a little bit. There's a bit of animosity between the Croatians and the Slovenes. And so they thought they were going to come and just, be busting down some Slovene for hacking in, or I don't know what. And as soon as I showed my American passport, I didn't show my Croatian passport. I showed my American passport. They were very unhappy that there was nothing to do. So,
you were seen as less of a criminal then.
Back then, yes, things have changed. So suffice to say, like, communication was very different back then. So I just showed up to the winery. And we started like tasting through the wines, and I have a photo somewhere, but it was just like this pile of wines that Giancarlo ended up opening up and tasting, and he had some other people there, but I was there for like 3 hours or something, and this was pretty typical. It's a very welcoming place. That's why I say it's just it's an excellent place to go visit. They're not going to open up wines and spend 3 hours with everyone that comes through, but they are very good at welcoming people in Istria, and I think it's a lovely place to visit. And the wines really do stack up. I mean, what you have there is probably one of the finest white wines produced in Croatia. It's elegant, it's a bit floral, but it's not over the top. It's not going to have that salinity that you would find in the Pošip, but at the same time, it's going to have some really like textured, delicate, layered mouthfeel to it. Just a hell of a wine.
Do you know, this is incredible because you've got notes of like peanut butter brittle there's this smoky, toasty nature to the wine, but it's more in this very elegant style, this waxy lemon and this kind of honey nuttiness, but so fresh. Again, quite textural, a little bit of nougat. It's got, there are aromas in here of flavours that are quite unique, but at the same time, if somebody wanted some context, because the quality's there, I would say this is like a more floral, elegant style of Meursault, but without the weight. So it's still very, very bright. It has texture, but it's not it doesn't feel full-bodied. And the oak uses, well, actually, I do know that they've used large wooden barrels for about 12 months, but quite clearly no. So that's opening up the fruit, but there's no Newegg like you might have in Meursault. But what an experience. I can't tell anyone listening how much this costs, because I was sent this bottle, very lucky. And funny enough, when they sent it to me, Strictly Wine, who are doing all these wines, if anybody's interested, I think this was the last bottle. This is a 2016, and I can't remember what the price was, and now it's not there. So everyone, sorry, I'm drinking the last bottle, I think. But we may get another vintage in. I think the
2000... The 18,
70?
I think the 18 should be arriving if it's not already there. I actually have a bottle of the 18 right behind me here in my cellar. So I think I think that's probably what you'll be getting soon. And it's same level. It's excellent.
Well, I know the 17 got platinum with the Decanter World Wine Wine Awards. The 18 got gold, but 96 points. Quite clearly, this is a wine that every single year is just proving a point. Now, this comes from a single vineyard that was planted in 1961. So this is definitely, I think, one of the vineyards of Croatia that people really say is the best. Am I this right in thinking that?
This is what they say, but I mean, everybody thinks that their vineyard is the best.
Fine. This is what they say, everyone. But I am tasting a wine that is from old vines that are more concentrated. This is been aged in those large wooden vats or barrels for a year, aged in bottle for a year before release. This is still going to be very different to Malvasia generally, because as an example, anyone in the UK, sadly, sorry, everyone who is in other countries, but Strictly Wine has a Malvasia from this winery, but they're more entry level and it's about £16. So what would people expect if they were going to spend £16 to £20 on Malvasia?
Well, I think you can even find some that are less than that. And I was going to say that's probably Malvasia's, and we should say Malvazia Istarska, because it's different from the other Malvasias out there. It's different than the Malvasia we have largely here in Spain. Well, we have a couple of them, but it's or in Italy. But it's you can produce kind of everything from this grape. It's extremely versatile. You can produce really young, very, very fresh wines, which that's actually one of the things that's changed the most in Croatia in the last probably 20 years since I've been tasting the wines, is this level has really improved and increased, and they're doing really good work on this. And the Istrians have kind of always been able to do this. So in Istria, you can find a bottle in this realm for about €5 to €7 in the shop. Quite affordable. The problem is they can be a bit samey, because everybody sort of hit on this winning formula for producing it, of doing a bit of cold maceration, and then you're just kind of vinifying it quickly and putting it out and doing a stainless steel. And so they can all sort of taste the same. That's not a terrible thing, because it's good. They're good wines, but it doesn't make a big difference between which one you get. As you move up in the levels, it can produce a long-aged wine. It has the acidity to do it, and these days people know how to work it correctly, to do maybe a little bit of lees work or what have you, to kind of really have a lengthy persistence to the wine, and to have it stand up to a bit of barrel aging. Again, they've kind of pulled back the barrel aging a good amount, because before they were doing new oak and it just slathered it. They're also doing a bit of aging in acacia barrels too. Yeah, I liked that quite a bit a few years ago. I'm liking it a bit less as time goes on. I'm kind of liking really big barrels, used oak, or then just stainless steel or cement to kind of age it, because it can produce really, really, really nice wines when worked correctly.
I'm going back and forth between the two, and I feel like the Pošip is a little bit more savoury. And I feel like the Malvasia Istriana is, obviously it's a different style, but a little bit more kind of peachy and aromatic, but also a little bit more of that floral edge coming through. Would you say that is fair? If, kind of a fruitier of the two is the Malvasia and slightly more savoury is the Pošip, or is that just more with the wines I've got?
No, I think overall that's a very, very fair assessment. The Malvasia is going to lean more into for people who like Trebbiano, Greco di Tufo, or other wines kind of in this line, maybe a little bit kind of Southern Rhone as well. But like I said, with the Pošip, it's definitely got a lot more width on the palate. It's going to be a very, very southern kind of southern variety.
Perfect. Well, listen, everybody, don't listen to me. Just go and get one of each. Give it a go. So I have a red grape variety, and this is Teran. So I'm drinking the 2024 Kozlovic Teran. So what does Teran? Oh, actually, Teran. Yeah. Teran. Teran. Oh dear. Okay, yeah. How does the Teran? How should it taste? What should people expect?
It's going to be the same grape as Terano in Italy. And there's also this huge debate. I'm kind of tempted not even to mention it because I'll probably get hate mail. But it's this grape has a couple of different names, but they're all the same grape. They've sort of proven this. I forget what it's called. What's it called? Vrfošt in Slovenia. See. But there's a lot of argument that goes back and forth on this. But as far as I understand, they are all the same grapes, just from different soils. And the thing about Teran is that, first of all, they don't grow tons of it in Istria. It's about, reds in total are about 20% of the production, but they do produce a little bit of Merlot and some other grapes there in addition to Teran. And I would say that overall, the grape is going to have, it can have a lot of tannic width on the palate, and it can have sort of this very iron rust, sort of carpaccio, meaty sort of notes on the nose. It can have good acidity to it. It can also be generally structured, and it can be very aggressive when it's quite young originally, but now it's gotten a lot more rounded to it and a lot more savory. You're tasting something different.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I agree. No, I'm saying it is. I'm trying in my head to think about what kind of grape variety that I would say it's similar to, and I'm not coming up with anything right now because it's like walking through a forest. It's got sour cherries and that black forest fruits, but it's got something like even pine forest, pine needles, and kind of dried herbs. There is like an earthiness without it being too mushroomy, because it's still kind of fruity, but more on the kind of the sour, but it's very pleasing. And I feel like the tannins are really present, but they're quite low. I don't think that they're big tannins, but they're there. They're still quite grippy. But this is still a juicy, medium-bodied wine for anybody. But flavour-wise, I find this quite unique. I find this quite different.
Yeah,
herbal.
Yeah, I'd say for people who like good Sangiovese, especially if you're talking more kind of like Brunello, or if you tried Bobal, or if you tried some of the warm Cabernet Franc from warmer vintages, maybe even a bit of Malbec from Cahors, not so much from Argentina.
Yes, it's got this really fruitiness, even like like the sour cherry for me is like really compoty. So it's like really, so there you go, the fruitiness of Malbec, but it's way more rustic tannins, more savory, more earthy, more going into a smoky nature, like you've taken a whole load of herbs, bay leaves, pine, thyme, and you're kind of burning them on a fire somewhere, like, and it's that smell. It's but yeah, I know it. If Sangiovese and Malbec had a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
There we go. Explained in plain language.
I would say probably the difference between this and say like the Malvazija Istarska is that the lower end versions of this, the younger versions, can be a little bit kind of aggressive. It depends on how they made it, but the ones I've had don't speak to me as much as like younger Malvazija. The more upper end Teran, and people that are producing it really, really well can produce very nice wines that also have some long age to them. I definitely think it's a quality grape. It does very well in Istria, but it needs to be worked quite carefully. Yeah, it's a little more delicate.
I definitely can sense that because of the tannins. But I think this is actually, they've obviously done a very, very good job. And interestingly, in the December article of Decanter, I was flicking through, we'd just planned in that we were going to do this podcast. And there's a section in the Decanter that's all about the younger generations taking over. So I'm looking in the article and it's Janina, who is the 5th generation that's going to take over from her parents, Gianfranco, and I think it's Antonella. And she has said that now after taking over from her parents, who have just like really the leaders of Croatian wine, she is, and they quite clearly have done a great job with the Malvasia Istriana. She is now on a path to do the exact same thing with Teran. So she's working really hard and she's going to make some probably she's searching sites. She's going to produce a single vineyard, top quality, super premium Teran. That's the plan, apparently. That was in the article. So it was quite good timing when I saw that. I was like, oh, this is perfect for the podcast.
Yeah, no, I saw that. I think it's this promotional feature that they ran there with a couple of different aspects to it. So,
well, for now, this is the Teran that we have, everybody. And again, Strictly Wine is doing it for £16 if you are interested. But we're talking about, obviously, the new generation's taking over. Wine has been made in Croatia for a very, very long time. I mean,
that is correct.
How far does it stretch back?
Well, obviously there's the big Roman presence. That was the part of the biggest aspect of it. But you have the Greeks that were there as well producing wine. There's a grape on the island of Korčula called Grk, Grk, because, who needs vowels? And it's that's another one that's kind of come through had a renaissance as well. That used to make very rustic, uninteresting white wines, and now it's producing some really engaging wines that are very different from Pošip, but also really approachable and quite pleasing. Before the Greeks, who knows? I mean, there were the Illyrians as well. They probably were making wine. It's been, wine has been made there as long as pretty much anywhere in Europe. It's they have an extremely long history of it. If you go into neighboring Herzegovina, there are some old carvings in stones actually, or have grape clusters on them. So
wow,
they've
seen it. They've done it. You talk about that. Okay, what is then? Can you think of, for you, the most magical vineyard or cellar experience that you've personally had in Croatia? If we could possibly follow in your footsteps, what would you say?
In terms of a winery, that's a tough call because a lot of the wineries that have sort of come up in recent years, they're like kind of more fancier and very much experienced, are ones like Stina that are relatively new. Corte Catarina in Pelješac Peninsula, north of Dubrovnik, is also a definite visit point. The winery of Bibić in Skradin, which is kind of the middle of the Dalmatian coast, they also have a really good restaurant that was featured on No Reservations a few years back and has been very popular. Their wines are very good as well. They're working with a slightly different palette of local grapes, but that's a definite destination. Boškinac as well, and Pog is a place to go to. Great restaurant, making some very nice wines, and Pog has excellent cheese, probably the best cheese in Croatia.
Okay.
And so those are definite locations to go to. But when you say vineyards, do you mean only wineries or do you mean actual physical vineyards?
Oh, it could be physical vineyard. Did you stand in a vineyard in Croatia and go, "This is insane. This is magic"? One of those moments, the spiritual moments where you go, this is what life is about.
Yeah, everything along the Dalmatian coast, like especially in Pelješac, is really, really impressive because they're all on the steep coast and going down into the Adriatic. The irony is that while they're breathtakingly stunning and have some very old vines to them and historically have produced some of the top wines, they're now actually kind of having a bit of problems because it's getting very hot and they have this reflection off the Adriatic that's just kind of amplifying the heat. And so there are two Grand Crus. I'll watch my fingers. There are two certified Grand Crus in Croatia because they've only recently sort of created a whole appellation system and codified their wine regions. But within that, they don't have like a Premier Cru and Grand Cru system, except for these two that are both on Pelješac, Postup, and Dingač. And the ironic part is that 50 years ago, these made a lot of sense because they were sort of the only kind of very unique sites where consistent ripening could happen. Now that's changed, and I don't know that these should necessarily be considered Grand Cru vineyards. Despite that, they are very pretty to look at.
Okay, good to know. Sometimes we do just need pretty, just as long as we have the right expectations. I mean, you mentioned it getting too warm now. So do you think that climate change is actually reshaping the Croatian wine map in ways that maybe newer regions are going to come out, think people are going to start planting in different places? Or different varieties?
I think this is it's probably a good point to talk a little bit more about the interior because we've just mainly been talking about the coast because that's where the majority of the action is. But the interior, this has changed the interior quite a bit. Now, there's the big strip that goes from kind of like Zagreb, the capital, all the way over to to Serbia. And that's called Slavonia. That's why I made the slip of the tongue. And it's kind of a large flat plain area, and you think it's a bit more in the interior, but they actually have more days of sunlight than the coast, weirdly enough. And that's just kind of growing. And so that's kind of changing their scope of what they're producing quite a bit. And it's also changing the ways that the wines are being produced. And so their wines, they used to be very thin, light wines, and they're getting a lot more body over the years. Also, in the regions near Zagreb, they're also producing fuller wines. They're having better vintages consistently. It's a bit like England. You know, these places that were a bit marginal are now producing consistently solid wines, especially the region where my family was originally from, which is Pleševica. That's to the southwest of Zagreb, and it's where they produce really excellent sparkling wines that in the recent years have been consistently extraordinary. But they've always been producing wines there. I mean, my great uncle, great-great-uncle, I guess, my great-grandmother's brother, he actually came to the United States and brought his wine press with him. So, you know, there's a long history of wine there, but I think in the last 10, 15 years, the sparkling wines from Pleševica are really, really worthwhile checking out too, if anybody can find them. I think they might all be drank in Croatia.
Look, listen, wine travel is a thing. We need to go there. Now we have an extra excuse. Okay, as we slowly start, summing up this episode, if you had to convert someone to Croatian wine, you're going to pick one bottle. You've got one chance to tell them that actually Croatian wine is great. What are you going to grab? Is that unfair?
It depends on what the person generally likes to drink and where they're coming from. It's a hard thing to say. I mean, because if they're a red wine drinker and they like more full-bodied wines, this Stipančić from Stina is like top end.
Okay.
But if you want to go to one producer that's producing excellent white Pošip as well as excellent red Plavac Mali, which is a smaller part of their production, but they do both on Korčula, that would be Crljenak.
Okay.
Really, the father who was the founder of it, he will recite poetry too when you visit in Croatian, so it might be difficult. But his daughter, again, this history, the daughter is taking over. This has actually become a big part in the recent history, and that it used to always be like it had to go to the son. But now there's a lot of daughters taking over, and his daughter is slowly taking over. But they are producing some of the most ethereal, most beautiful Pošip wines there are. And their Plavac Mali, their red, is also very, very delicate and balanced. So if you're going to choose like one producer and a red and a white, that would probably be the place to go to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well answered. Now, have we touched on all of the grape varieties of Croatia, at least that you feel people need as the introduction? Have we missed anything that people should know, need to know if they're visiting Croatia and they can get their hands on everything?
I would say the only one, there's a couple that probably include in there. They have quite a few, but the ones that are most important to include in there is what's coming from north of Zagreb, what's called the Croatian uplands. They have their own version of ferment from
yeah.
And unfortunately, the name is a little tricky in English.
Oh no! What do they call it?
You need to make sure to say the S not as an S but as a sh, because it's Pošipel. So if you don't say the sh,
Pošipel.
But that's what they're calling.
What would it mean? I mean, does it mean something else if I don't say Pošip?
It's pussy pill. So it's, that's a tricky one. There's a winery in Istria whose name is you spell it Fakin and it's pronounced fucking.
This is fun. I mean, this is the thing. Come on, this will get people into Croatian wines. But anyway,
they use it a lot. So anyway, there's Pošip, which is ferment, and there's a few producers up there that are producing some really nice wines from that. On the coast, there's probably there's two other grapes. Lazin is it got a bit of attention, but they're both red grapes. Lazin has gotten some attention, is producing some interesting wines, but probably the one that's going to produce the most interesting grapes going forward as people work with it more and more is Babić. So
Babić, okay.
People might know the name Babić from New Zealand because it's a Croatian family that immigrated to New Zealand many years ago and are producing wines under the label Babić. But in Croatia and Dalmatia, it's just a grape. And so Babić, it can produce, I hate to make this big of a comparison, but there's sort of this Nebbiolo sort of potential to it. It's a wine that's kind of a bit more ethereal, but like a lot of dense tannins on the palate. And so I think there are a lot of grape varieties like this throughout Europe that sort of have a great potential for them. Once people figure out how to kind of get into that, like, let's take it to the next Barolo level or even Barbaresco. It's still coming. It makes interesting wines, but there's a level of technical know-how that's still sort of working on that. I mean, because also along with Babić, I would say also Sumol in Catalonia as well is sort of in this group, and to a certain extent also Aglianico in Taurasi.
Okay.
So but Babić is definitely one to look for as well. Also, south of Dubrovnik in this region of Konavle, I was telling you about that you can go to if you want to kind of escape to Dubrovnik. There's Malvazija Dubrovačka. So, another Malvazija completely different from Malvazija Istarska. Malvazija Dubrovačka is the same grape as Malvazija di Lipari from Italy, also Malvazija de Sitges in Catalonia, Malmsey on Madeira, and also Malvazija Aromatica in the Canary Islands. So that can produce some really nice wines in Konavle, but you're not really going to find them outside of that region or Dubrovnik. So, but these would say I would say kind of the other grapes to be on the lookout for.
Perfect. Well, we have talked all about Croatian wines. However, as I mentioned at the beginning, you taste right about all wines of the world. And you have just recently released the Hudin Top 100 2025. Correct. So I'm going to leave a link for everybody to find out your top 100 wines of last year. Are you allowed to tell us here the number one? What made number one spot?
Yeah, the number one is an amazing winery in Priorat in Catalonia that's been producing great wines year over year, but this to date has been probably their best wine. It's their 2021 Selección Especial that's Crljenak. Outstanding wine. I think it's just now on sale. Not cheap. I think it's about 80 euros a bottle in Spain.
Yeah, well, to be the top 100, yeah.
But it's a wine that kind of hits that sort of 100-point level. So it's really amazing wine, really outstanding. But the rest of the list is not shabby. There's a great number of wines in there that go all the way from 8.5 euros up to 190 euros a bottle. So I like to be all inclusive and give something for everybody.
Lovely. Everyone, go over, read that list. Buy the books so we can get the Istria book. And Miquel, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
I really appreciate
you.
I now know so much more about Croatian wine. And so does everyone else. So thank you.
Super.
Thanks so much. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. So if this episode has taught us anything, it's that Croatian wine isn't just a destination, it's a deep, layered story, best understood glass by glass. And in the immortal words I never thought I'd be quoting on a wine podcast, from Game of Thrones, said by Tyrion Lannister, I drink and I know things. And today, I think we can safely say we do. Next week, we are getting geeky again, properly geeky, as we dive into Nebbiolo. Did you know this single grape has a surprising number of different biotypes? To guide us, I'm joined by one of the world's leading experts on Barolo and Barbaresco, Ian D'Agata, who's taking us on a journey through Nebbiolo like you've never heard before. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or drop a few stars on whatever podcast app you're listening on. It really helps the show reach more wine lovers, and I would be incredibly grateful. I wish you all a truly magical week, full glasses, curious minds, and at least one wine that makes you pause and smile. Until next week, wine friends, cheers to you.